the press release. Now, before you get started on the press release assignment, hopefully you've read the chapter in the book and seen the expanded PowerPoints, either the narrated or the ones with notes from the book in eCollege. I'd just like to take you through the press release and the assignment. So I just want to give you some tips, reinforce some of the points you probably already read about. Press release is really the workhorse for marketing public relations people. It's the thing that we use to distribute the information, the message that we want to send to connectors, to those connectors. It's information that needs to be timely, and it's distributed to those connectors that we talked about, and we decided who they were going to be when we formulated our connectors list. By way of terminology, you will hear some people talk about press releases as news releases. They are effectively the same thing. They're synonyms. I will refer to them as press releases more often than not. Here's an example of a press release. This press release was put out on the internet. This is really the way that most of us in marketing and public relations are doing it these days, although hard copies of press releases do still exist, and a lot of times we'll have both. We'll have hard copies available. We'll also have emailable copies in PDF or Word format that we can send out to media folks. So there's different ways to do it, but this just gives you an idea of what an electronic press release will look like. And there's certainly more examples of press releases on eCollege, both in doc sharing and in the bibliography. So why do we send out a press release in the first place? Obviously, it's something that's going to inform the connectors about something, right? We're trying to pitch a story. We're trying to get people to write about us, mention us in their newscasts, etc., put us up in their blogs. So it's going to be an introduction to connectors. Here is our product. Here's our company. This is what we do. It gives them something to read. And we're trying to elicit media mentions and word of mouth, right? So we're saying to this connector, this journalist, this blogger, this editor, here's something that we're doing. We think it's of interest to your audience. Please spread the word, right? We can do it to announce a new product or service, and even publicize the good deeds of a firm or an audience, right? So lots of different reasons to create a press release. New product or service, as we mentioned, the opening of a new business location or relocation, announcing a special event that you're going to do, announcing a new person that you've hired in your company, or the promotion of an executive or someone to an executive position, recognizing a good deed that someone in your company or the company has done for the community, announcing public appearances by your company's executives or employees, announcing someone winning an award, winning a contest, creating a contest for promotional purposes, and also for crisis control. And a lot of those things have been in the news recently and will continue to be. So this is just sort of a partial list of reasons that we would create a press release. Remember, this is sort of the statement of facts. This is the important things people need to know in order to entice them to write a story or present our material to their audience. So what does a press release look like? There are certain elements that exist in every press release. Press release label, release date statement, contact information, a headline, potentially sub-headlines. They don't necessarily have to be there, but they can be. The body of the press release, the lead of the press release, which is actually part of the body, and we'll see that in a second, and the boilerplate, which is also part of the body, but the very end. And then we always conclude with the 3 pound signs, and basically that means the end. And you'll see those on press releases. So let's take a look at a press release. Here's an example. Upper left-hand corner, we have contact information. Contact information is vitally important for a press release because people need to know, journalists, connectors of any sort, need to know where they can contact you, because usually they need more information in order to write or produce their story. So they'll want to get in touch with you either via phone or via internet or any other type of electronic communication that you might have. So that's vitally important there. We also write the word press release on the press release, so you'll see that in the very upper left-hand corner here. We also have a release date statement, and most press releases say for immediate release and then have the date that the press release goes out. Sometimes we will send out press releases and ask the media not to put anything out right away, and we'll talk about that in a second. Then what we see here, 23 million U.S. small businesses to close, that would be a headline, something catchy, something that's going to get people's attention. And if you read this press release, you realize that it's kind of got a twist to it. And then we can also put some sub-headlines there that are clarifying. Think that a lot of press releases turn into news stories in magazines and newspapers, give the editors and journalists some ideas of what the headlines of their story might be. So if you want to be clarifying or have some headlines that are a bit longer, under where that headline is, you could put 1 or 2 sub-headlines. Then we have a date line that basically says this press release was put out in this city and state on this date. So city, comma, state, hyphen, date. And then we go from there. A lot of times you will see press releases with some words in parentheses, like Business Wire or PR Newswire or Reuters or AP. What that signifies is that that press release was distributed through one of those sources. When we write a press release ourselves, there's nothing in parentheses there. If we do use one of those services, they insert that when they do the distribution for us. So when you write one as a marketing person, nothing in parentheses after that. Just in bold, city, state, hyphen, date, and then you go on with your press release. This first paragraph, and especially this first sentence, are what we consider the lead. These are the important pieces. This is the information that's really going to pull people through the body of this press release. You want to give them the most interesting stuff first, get them excited, and then the other paragraphs are going to pull them through. They're going to give them the type of information that they need to write a story. Okay, this is going to be support information, facts, figures, quotes from experts, etc. And the very last piece, the very last paragraph, is a boilerplate. This is just a very brief statement of what the company is about. This is something that we save and we use over and over again on all of our press releases. Sometimes we have a boilerplate statement that goes on every press release for the firm. Sometimes we'll have a few boilerplates that will go out, say, for press releases on every product. We'll have its own boilerplate. But it's something that is used over and over again. And then as we see at the bottom, there's the 3 colons basically saying that this is the end. While we will occasionally see 2-page press releases, I want to suggest that a press release should only be 1 page. And then we can link people to or suggest that we have more information available. Okay, as noted here too, there's lots more on eCollege, both in the web bibliography and doc sharing if you want to look at some more. And certainly Google press releases and you'll find lots. Okay, I talked about that date line where it said for immediate release. And sometimes we want to send press releases out but ask the journalists not to publish it right away. Because we have maybe a launch date for a particular product. Think about how the Apple iPad was just launched or the iPhones had been launched. It's on a certain date. We all know when that particular piece of electronics is going to be launched, so we sort of wait to hear about that. Now what happens is that journalists take a while to write their stories. They take a while to get coverage together for a news story that's going to be on TV. So if we're launching the product next Friday, we can't expect the journalists to run their stories next Friday if we don't give them information until that day. So what we want to do is give them information in advance and say, don't publish this till next Friday. And this is something that we call an embargo. This is asking the connector not to release the news until a particular date. Now, a caution here. Traditional journalists will almost always, 99.9% of the time, honor an embargo. It's part of what they do. It's part of the journalism culture. But we have found that bloggers don't always respect embargoes. Bloggers are not always professional journalists, or I will say perhaps rarely professional journalists, and their job is to get the scoop. So we found it. We have found that often bloggers will ignore the embargo and publish your information before you want it out there. So I would caution you to not embargo bloggers unless you know them very well and know they will respect your embargo. And bloggers can work pretty quickly, so if you did send them something on Friday morning, just seconds before your announcement, they could probably get something up there. So a word of caution, embargoes are great to use when you need them, but there's also some pitfalls. Press releases need to be written well, and I've talked about this in other slides, in other narrations. It's in the book. But think about who they're going to. we send press releases out to editors, we send them out to journalists, we send them out to people who write and produce the written and spoken word for a living. These people know about writing. These people get frustrated with bad writing. You need to watch how they're written. Also, the way you write can entice a particular connector to cover your story. A poorly written piece is not going to help you. So, a press release should illustrate your story. Paint a picture with words. Stick to the facts. Don't make it hype. I don't want any press release to read like a sales letter. We're not trying to sell something. We're trying to convince the journalist to write a story about our product. And this is going to be an informational story that is going to make the consumers, the audience of that media, interested in what we've got. Right? So they should not read like a sales letter. They should be facts that are interesting about a product. Okay, pick an angle though. A lot of times we'll do product or solution. Here's this new thing out. It's the first thing on the block. It's never been done before, or it's helping the community, or whatever it happens to be. So pick an angle on this, and then use an active, not a passive voice. Okay, think about the verb doing the action, not the verb or the subject doing the action, not the action being done upon the subject. If anybody has any questions about that, let me know. So active voice is really, really important. I'll put up something on Doc sharing a bibliography about use of active voice. And then use mixed case letters. That is, capital letters at the beginning of sentences and then lowercase. Don't use all caps. Remember, that's shouting in electronic media. Make sure your grammar is good, and certainly use a word processor when you do this. And then also think of the press release as sort of an inverted pyramid. We're going to start with the most general information, and then we're going to work down to things that are a little bit more specific. We're going to go from stuff they need to have to stuff that would be nice if they had. And then there's the boilerplate. As we mentioned before, it's a short description of your company for editorial use. And that's something that's going to go on every press release that you write. Same thing. And then, today we have something we call a video news release. Instead of just something in written word, it's something that's put out via video. And oftentimes they're formatted like a newscast. Organizations, television news media companies, and some electronic news media will take that, edit it, and rebroadcast it. Sometimes they will indicate that they're using your footage. Other times they won't, and there's some ethical questions in there as well. I want to suggest that the media should announce the fact that they are using your video news footage when they present it to their audience. So basically this is something prepared by marketers. It's 60 to 90 seconds long, and it can be used by television stations as it is, or they can edit it. And usually we give them video in a format that's editable. Okay, so the assignment is to write a press release for the launch of a new product or your product or service, or announcing a special event for your company. So that's what we want to look at for the press release. If you have any questions for me, please give me a call.